lot of salespeople, especially in big companies, make the mistake of coming and being upset when the deal doesn't go their way. They don't have the data behind it. They don't understand the financials. They don't understand the mechanics of what it's going to take. Meaning they can't say, boss, if you give me this pricing, I know I'm going to get the deal because. I want to welcome you to my sales podcast, where we have one focus and one focus only. That is helping you, the sales community, and sales leaders create more conversations with more qualified buyers, ultimately leading to improving your sales productivity and closing more deals. Each show, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, and connect with more buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., and you're now listening to the Selling with Social Sales Podcast. Hey, and welcome to this episode of Selling with Social. Now, I'm excited to present this to you because I have the privilege of being interviewed by my friend, CEO of Seamless.ai, Brandon Bornancin. Now, I'm an investor and an advisor in Seamless.ai, and I'm excited about this show because I was interviewed on his podcast, Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. You're going to hear my story of how I started out in retail and a man with a toupee, yeah, that's right, a toupee, promoted me from a photo finisher into sales, and then how my career took off from there, learning how to apply the stuff that I just was doing naturally into B2B sales. We'll spend some time on my secrets to becoming a sharer of content internally to be promoted, as well as finding that mentor that can get you where you want to go. And this is an awesome story. So make sure you stay all the way to the end, because I talk a little bit about something that, well, you wanted it to do, but you probably have never done before. So take a listen and enjoy this show with Brandon Bornancin from Seamless.ai. And the show is Sales Secrets from the Top 1%.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I am thrilled, honored, grateful, and humbled to have with me today my good friend, Mario Martinez Jr. Mario is the CEO and founder of Vengresso. He's the host of the popular Selling with Social podcast, and he's recognized as a top sales performance genius in the U.S. Mario was also named 2018's top sales influencers by the Modern Sales magazine, top 25 inside sales professionals, and this past year listed as the 6th most influential social selling leader globally. That's a lot of buzzwords. And previously, Mario worked at companies like PGI, Sprint, eSolutions, and Preminos. Mario is a playmaker and a sales game changer in the industry, and we are happy to have him with us from San Francisco, California. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bro, I'm so glad I could be here with you. And obviously not San Francisco, but that was a freaking awesome introduction.
Dude, you got to use that. I'm going to be your hype man.
Every time, man.
I'm going to be your hype man. Whenever you go on stage, bring me and I will intro you like that with flames everywhere.
I love it. The edification behind that just makes me seem like some kind of crazy dude, and I'm just a plain old regular dude, man. I enjoy the beaches just like everybody else.
And that brings up a great point, man. So the sales audience, the sales marketers and entrepreneurs watching the show are dying to know a few things. Obviously, sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. They obviously want to know, what is your top sales secret? But before we get into that, they're dying to know, who is Mario? What is your background? Where have you worked in sales? And what have been the top sales successes, failures, learning experiences throughout everywhere in your career that took you to this success of where you're at today, which is all over the place, recognized all over, successfully coaching everyone all over, and I'd love to just take it from the beginning, man. Where did you come from? What's your background? And how'd you get started in sales?
Bro, it's actually an interesting story. So I actually used to work for a camera chain center by the name of Ritz Camera Centers. Now,
I actually know those.
You actually know? Okay, I was gonna say most millennials and below, like
this is like retail stores, right? The Ritz retail stores.
Exactly.
Damn.
Yeah, and I was a photo finisher. Do you know what that is?
The person that edits the photos.
Not edits. When you got the 35 millimeter roll of film, you take it and you put it through the system, and then you sit there and you under the camera screen, you'd print and you add on extra magenta, some cyan, you do darker, lighter. I was that dude right there, right? So
did you put in the water like I saw in the movies where you take the thing and you put in the water, or no?
We did not do custom. That was all outsourced work. So anything that had a 35 millimeter roll of film.
Got it. Awesome.
I don't even know if people know what a 35 millimeter is anymore. Like you can't even hardly find it. Everything's digital. Everything's digital, right? So I used to take the film, I used to print. And I was in a small store. And in many of the stores, they actually had photo finishers, and then they had the sales group. In our store, because we were a small store, you were a photo finisher, and then you supported the sales, and the cashier did all the cashier and rang everybody out, right? So I started doing that when I was 16. I was 21 years in sales. So this is my 21st year in business sales, not including my retail experience.
Wow.
And one day when I was like 17, almost 18 years old, a guy, he was the regional manager. His name was Hunter. And Hunter had a toupee. Like I couldn't stop staring at this toupee. For anybody listening, I'm sorry if you have a toupee, but it was such an awkward looking like Donald Trump haircut. And no knock against Donald Trump, but I'm just saying. And it was a toupee. It was definitely a toupee because I definitely saw like the what do you call those things the women use when they put the bobby pins? It was the bobby pins. Yeah. So I used to see that stuff on his head, man. It was crazy. Anyways, he comes in and he says to me, he goes, "Mario, I'd like to speak to you." And I was like, oh, okay, sure, no problem. So he says, come over here. And he says, I got to talk to you about some of the numbers. And I was like, oh, dang. I was like, what do you mean by numbers? And so he opens up the books and he's like, I'm looking at these numbers. And do you realize that you are one of the top sales producers in our region? And I was like, what? No. He was like, and you don't even do this full time. What are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? I don't know. So I explained to him and he was like, oh my gosh, wow, this is amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Wow. So anyway, so I went to UC Berkeley, Cal.
Awesome.
And unfortunately, I didn't have any money to be able to from scholarships or anything like that were going to pay my way through. So I had to buy my way through by working.
Good for you, man.
And so I actually applied for a transfer from the Concord store to the Berkeley store. So Hunter comes in and he says, Mario, I'd like to talk to you about your transfer. And he says, I have to deny it. And I was like, what? Are you freaking serious? I'm like, what do you mean you didn't deny it? I need this job because I have to pay my way through college. And he goes, I can't transfer you as a photo finisher. Berkeley is our second highest grossing revenue store in the whole region. And I need you to go into sales.
Nice.
And I was like, what? Sales? Like, do I make more money? And he was like, yeah, you get $1 more, for your hourly wages. And then you get commissions. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess I'll do that. He's like, just do whatever it is you're doing here. And so he actually forced me into sales in retail. And that's where I realized, because when he went through, what are you doing? And he started comparing what other people were doing. And I was like, all I'm trying to do is help. That's it. And he's like, tell me what you do. And so I would say, well, I would literally open up the box and I would say, Mr. Customer, are these your pictures? They'd say, yes, those are mine. We always wanted to confirm they were giving them the right pictures, right?
Yep.
I would say, by the way, one of the things I notice about your pictures is, and I would tell them, blah, 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 too much color. You were trying to do action shots and it didn't, it was blurry. And then they would say, dang, so what do you think I should do? I'm like, well, a couple options. You could actually buy this film and that would actually help. Or, there are some really cool pieces of camera equipment and those would actually help you out. And so they'd be like, well, how much is the new camera? And all of a sudden, boom, it's just by helping people and telling them exactly what they can do to make themselves better, make pictures better, make memories better, right? That's how I started producing the sales for the region.
Wow, dude, that's insane. So it was basically you were educating your buyers and just helping them maximize their success with their photography.
That's exactly right. And I didn't even know that it was the education. It was the adding the value. It was telling them what wasn't working, asking them if they want to have better memories, right? If they wanted to be able to capture these moments in a different way, which if you think about it, all those things I just mentioned could be applied to business problems in B2B sales. And so crazy as it may sound, after I left there, I got this great internship and it was selling an auto financing newsletter to like car dealerships. And that was my first B2B sales job as an intern working while I was going through college. And that landed me an opportunity to work as a sales and marketing manager for a consulting company. And then that led to getting an opportunity where I was the youngest hire that they had ever made in a company that Sprint Corporation, the wireless company, now known as the wireless company.
Yep.
They had actually launched a $1 billion company that was all around infrastructure as a service, IaaS, infrastructure as a service. And it was all co-location, hosting, and all that stuff. I was one of the first 35 technology salespeople at the age of 21 that was hired with a 6-figure base freaking salary.
Dude, that's
as a direct result. And I remember the director's name was Jeff Max. Jeff said to me, he goes, every mass grouping of hiring that I do, I always have one wild card. You're my wild card. The next youngest person that they hired was 28. And then after that, it went up to like mid 30s to more senior and tenured folks into their late 40s. And I was the number one producer in that organization. In fact,
hold on. Why did he say I don't want to interrupt the story, but this is so good, man. So what did you do? Like, what were the strategies or things that you did to get into that Sprint opportunity? Do you remember, like you said, when you were doing the camera thing, right? It was the educating the buyer, but like what took you to the next level at the next thing?
So same exact thing. So when I went into the sales and marketing company doing the auto financing newsletter, Jesus,
were you
so
like
funny.
Writing the email newsletters, or were you like?
No, I didn't write it. It was a GSI instructor that was the writer, the author of the newsletter for this company. His name was Ron Lotion. I still remember him. I'm still connected with the guy on LinkedIn, believe it or not. Awesome. And he's still doing the same thing. It's freaking awesome.
Oh man, awesome people guy. Love the.
So he hired me. And same thing, I would start making phone calls. And this newsletter was all about education and awareness on latest trends and tips that are happening in the auto financing world. I don't remember all the specifics, but I do remember this. I started with a line of questions that basically anybody who answered them, if they had a problem, it would be expressed. Right? In terms of being able to sell more cars, be able to have better financing programs, connect with the right banks, like all that. So it was all around customer-centric business problem selling. You had a problem. No. Yes, you're a sale. Yes. No. Well, I was looking for anybody that had the problem. And that's what afforded me the job to be able to go into the consulting world.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of in-depth discovery. Like you were executing sales discovery at a really young age, it sounds like, and probably looking for the money to freaking pay for the tuition.
That's exactly right. But here's what I did. I remember sitting down with Ron and I said, Ron, why do people want this newsletter? And he started talking about, how they're the largest this and they're the greatest this. And, I was like, they don't care about you. I mean, if I was, I don't know, I'm your intern. I don't care about that stuff. What I care about is what's inside this newsletter that is going to make me want to buy a 12-month-long subscription, right? What is inside it? And then I said, ultimately, what do you want them to do when they're reading this newsletter? And what he wanted out of it was the consulting services. So they read something, they needed to reconstruct their whole financing, and he wanted to be able to sell consulting. So in the conversations, what ended up happening is we'd start talking about their financing program, their lease program, whether or not they had enough education, whether or not their salespeople were educated about how the financing and leasing worked, and they were not. So therefore, here was an education newsletter, therefore they would buy. But what it led to was the fact that they would need somebody to help come in and reconstruct the financing program so the dealership would make more money against the banks, selling them these financing solutions. And that's where this consultant, Ron, would come into play. And that it was just like trying to put things together, which is no different than what we do in B2B sales today.
Dude, that's incredible. So executing the discovery, figuring out the value propositions of like why people give a damn versus the features and benefits and me.
Exactly right.
And then how did you parlay that? I love the wild card so then you move on to Sprint. They probably interviewed 1,000 people. You're one of this small class that got selected. You were named the wild card. Why did you want to get out of the newsletter thing and join Sprint?
I remember that. I was 21, man. This is crazy. I got contacted by a recruiter, and the recruiter was like, hey, we've got this really hot opportunity. Tell me about your background. And I spoke to the guy and he was like, man, you're really not the right fit that what they're looking for. They're really looking for the technology sales guy, the guy that understands. And he's like, but I really freaking dig the conversation. Like, you get some of the base elements, right? He's like, I tell you what, I don't think you're the right fit for this, but you may be the right fit for some other stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So anyways, so what I found out was that there was like 15 different recruiters in the Bay Area that they were working with to be able to recruit. And it literally was 1,000 people that they were sourcing through to select 35 sales reps. Damn. So I did some reverse search. I was like, man, this opportunity sounds freaking awesome. So I went on the hunt to find the recruiters that were recruiting for this particular position, right?
Smart.
And so that's what I did. And I don't remember how I did. It was Monster or whatever. I went on
because back then they didn't have Seamless or LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly,
it was like,
right?
What do you do even back then without that stuff?
So I went through a couple of recruiters and they were like, yeah, no, too young. Nah, no, too young. Until I met this one guy. His name was Jim. Met this one guy. He was like, dude, you are freaking way too young, but you are kind of like, you get this. You are the guy that I think they're looking for. He goes, let me ask you this question. If I coach you, will you do exactly as I say? And I was like, will it land me the job? And he was like, if you do exactly as I say. I was like, then let's do it. So one recruiter, right? One recruiter. So here's the best part. I start going through the interview process and I meet with like 10 different layers of management. And
all this management at Sprint, right?
It was called eSolutions. And so Sprint had actually funded the company.
Got it.
It was like $1 billion investment. This is when the like data centers were big, co-location, web hosting, all that stuff, right? Back in 2003, I think it was 2003, something like that. So I go through all these interviews and the recruiter prepped me, man. He was on the phone. He's like, here are the series of questions. I wrote my answers out. He was like, this is crap. Let me help you restructure this. And he really, really, really helped me out, right? And he was a very senior recruiter. He's like, I want to see you win. Like, you've got grit, you've got heart. Awesome. So he helped me, and my writing was horrible. I'm not a writer. Like, my editors, they hate me, right? So like I'm just not a writer. I'm just a Mexican kid, a poor Mexican kid that just worked hard. And I started writing. He would edit it, and he was like, say this is the way you want to restructure. Think B2B, blah, 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 right? Mm-hmm. So here's the best part. Here's the kicker. I get through the interview process, and the recruiter was tight with Jeff Max. And he's like, listen, man, he's like, give this kid a shot. And Jeff's like, all right, I got one wild card. I always do a wild card. Let's put him through what's called their personality assessment test.
Oh, gosh.
Put me through the personality assessment test, and I get a phone call back. And he's like, I got good news and I got bad news. And I'm like, well, what's the bad news? He's like, the bad news is you failed miserably the personality test. Everything that they were looking for inside of a salesperson, you do not match. You are not a team player. You're not this. You're not that. You're not. And it's just all the things.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, it means that you can't get hired. And I was like, well, what's the good news?
Yeah. What does that mean? Like,
so then he goes, but here's the thing. Jeff Max has this policy called a wild card. He wants to play his wild card on you. And I was like, wild card, what is that? And he was like, every time he does a mass hiring, he picks one crazy person that he thinks is like personality wise that he loves. But the paperwork, the assessments says, whoa, do not keep this person, right? No. Long story short, I show up and we killed it. We grew the company to a little over almost 4,000 people. And then the .bomb hit and they shut everything down. And I was asked to stay on board. I was one of the last 2 people in the company that transitioned off. We sold all of our assets that they asked to stay on. And then they found me a home inside of Telcom in the mothership on Sprint for doing wireline and national accounts. And that's where I sunk my teeth into public sector, enterprise accounts, mid-market. And then I ended up taking over the Globals organization out of California. And that was a freaking awesome ride.
Wow. So before we go on to Sprint, and I know you were there for a while, which is awesome. You had a long, successful career there through a number of different roles. Talk to me about what did you do to crush it at eSolutions in sales? And I know this is more than a decade ago, 2 decades, nearly a decade and a half ago. But think about, what you were doing to generate the 6 million, the 8 million, like all these different big quotas that you had with Silicon Valley region and all of these others. Like, what'd you do differently? Or maybe you picked up a new tip, or maybe it was the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I want to tell you, like, here I was 21 years old to 28. That was my time frame there, right? And 21 to 28, and I was in a full quota carrying account executive role, 6-figure income at the base, right? Plus way, and they were making way more money than that when you added on commissions. And I just went back to exactly what it was that I did when I was in retail. Find the problem, educate on a solution. Find the problem, educate on the solution. And then while I was there, I realized as well that in order to be able to sell against my youth, which is something that I had a really difficult time selling with and selling through, because I looked young, right? And I wasn't your most sophisticated salesperson. I was a young salesperson, not only in age, but in demeanor, in looks, in the way I carried myself. I was young, right? And I was, came from a poor background, poor upbringing. I worked my way through college, right? That was just me. It was really hard, both internally at the company and externally as well. And I remember thinking, what did I do in order to be able to set myself apart when I was in the retail, when I was this? And it was all about personalization.
Personalization. So
personalization.
What do you mean by personalization?
You had to establish that there was a problem, right? You had to have that baseline. That's why I just talked about
identify the problem.
So establish the problem, begin educating. But now you take it up a notch. Now you become friends. You personalize your messaging. You personalize your outreach. When I reached out to these buyers, we had meetings. There was the old thing that we used to call, and I still now in our sales training today, we call it looking for the fish on the wall.
Looking for the fish on the wall. What is that? The
fish on the wall. In the old days when we had meetings, we do a lot of face-to-face meetings. Now everything's virtual and mobile, right? We walk into the office and we're looking for something to be able to start a conversation. We're looking for that big fish on the wall to be like, did you catch that? You're looking for the picture on the desk that shows them carrying
the marlin. The marlin,
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. That's what you had to do in order to be able to start the conversation. And every 1 hour meeting that I hosted, the first 15 minutes was shooting the breeze, building a personal relationship with individuals, learning about them, talking about their kids, figuring out who they are as a buyer and as a person, and then personalizing content. When I figured out that some of them, for example, his name was Mike, a company called App Shop that was bought by Oracle. This company, Mike was the CTO. He had a home in Mexico, and that him and his wife, they built from the ground up and along with his father. And so I took an interest. So I'm like, I want to buy a house, right? And I did. At 22 years old, I bought my first house. Congrats. $350,000 house here in the Bay Area. That's when I bought that house.
Dude.
And the 6 months later,
and in the Bay Area,
right here. And I bought it in the city of Martinez. And then the next month I went out and bought my brand freaking spanking brand new body style, new model BMW 3 Series convertible.
Sick.
Man, I was rolling with life, right?
So, dude, you and I both had convertibles at a young age. I love it.
Yeah, we both have convertibles. That was a fun car, let me tell you. Anyways.
Yeah, too fun, too young.
So what I started doing was I realized, I need to be a person with this individual. Like, I need to be a friend. I need to be somebody that they can know, like, and trust. And that's just me. That's just my personality anyways, to be able to get to know somebody, to talk to them, to be able to, exchange conversation. And that's what I started doing. So personalization, right? When he was buying a house in Mexico, guess what I was looking for? Where are you buying it at? Where's the development at? I've been doing some research. Is this where you're at? And we would exchange personal messages around that, right? How are you doing it? What are you doing? Add value.
Okay.
Personalize.
So personalization, add value. And when you say add value, there's a lot of ways to add value. Like, what are you thinking? How were you adding value back then?
They had a problem business-wise.
Yep.
How do we add value? What are the issues that you're looking to solve? For example, I knew that App Shop, they had as a startup company, they had an exit model. The exit model was they wanted Oracle to buy them, right? So it was like, what is it going to take from a technology perspective that's going to help you get purchased or acquired by Oracle?
Yep.
And from a technology perspective, he was like, well, we can't be in a rinky-dink little colo center, not on in this case, it was co-location. And we want to make sure that we've got, a 99.59% uptime availability. And we're like, all right, well, that eliminates colo.com. It eliminated Rackspace back then. It eliminated all these other companies where all the major fiber providers had not built out their nodes inside. And this was all telecom speak. I can't even believe I remember it. So when we start, okay, well, look, all right, this is what you're looking for. All right, so if we provided that, then will that help you for the plans to get to where you want to go? And he was like, absolutely. Now we're on even playing field between us, do it yourself. Like they can go into some of these other data centers and go buy the infrastructure themselves, or they could work with us to manage it. So it would be like, all right, well, do you have the resources to? Because you have the resources, well, then you should go ahead and do it yourself. Well, we really don't want that because what we're really focused on is growing the business. And because we're a startup company, I need to be out in the field in addition to providing the strategy and the oversight. So you need hands and feet, right? So you see how we started understanding, like, ultimately, what do you want to do? Oh, you need to be out in the field. Gotcha. Why do you need to be in the field? Well, because he's helping the sales team to sell. Why? Yep. Because they're trying to get the revenue to a certain number. Why? Because they want to exit. Why? Everybody knows why a startup company wants to exit, right?
Yeah, it makes
sense. So that's where you start looking at, like, how do you provide value in the process, which is looking to solve specific sets of business problems. Wow. And then the third thing, it was never leave a meeting, a message, a phone call, a email without driving to something else. Okay. Right? So that's what we call a call to action. So here we go. If you haven't figured this out yet, we've got personalization. Yep. Whether that is in-person, face-to-face, building a personal relationship, or even personalizing my messaging, my outreach. In the business message, I might talk about the Mexico thing, right? In this particular circumstance with Mike at App Shop. I also had Yahoo as a customer, etc. Personalization, value, bring value, right? Understand what the end game is. And last but not least, CTA. We call this at Vingresso the PVC method. Personalization, value, and a call to action. And any type of outreach, cold outreach through a cold call, an in-mail or a LinkedIn message or a cold connection, bring the PVC method into the process. And that is how I learned to be able to sell. And some of the things that I brought to the table was bring that PVC method into everything that I did in a sales engagement.
And that's how you crushed it at eSolutions. And then
so I was at Preminos. Actually, I skipped one. Preminos was an EDI software company, and I was trained by one of the best, Mr. Greg Wolf. Love that guy. We're still connected, and we talk to this day. Like, he was one of my mentors. Marsha Jepson, she's over at Oracle now. Awesome. Loved her. Same thing. These guys trained me, but they never compartmentalized this stuff. Like Greg, he was from the East Coast. He'd tell me, "Hey, Mario, just do this. Mario, just do that." Right?
Mario.
So that's what you do from Jersey, right? He's from Jersey. So he would just tell me what to do. And then I started putting it all together, right? And everything netted down to the PVC method.
Why'd you call it PVC? Because isn't it PAC? Like, well, PVC, like personal value call to action. Where does PVC or what do you call it?
As in personalize, V as in value, C as in call to action.
PVC. Yeah, PVC. Gotcha. Got it. PVC, personal value.
Personalization.
Totally follow. That makes sense. Awesome, man. So you somehow survived the onslaught of whackings when the .com bust hits,
I did, right? Yeah.
Was that like a political, like you were like going to war politically and you had to like save your job? Or was it easy, like they were just like, yeah, we've got two guys, Mario and someone else. That's the only people we're taking because you were just carrying such a big bag.
Hey, bro, I'm going to tell you, I worked with some really amazing sales professionals and folks that I learned from a lot throughout the years. But one thing that stood out in the crowd was I was a very vocal sales rep and I was very ambitious, like extremely ambitious, right? And some people would be turned off by the ambition that I had as a young career professional. And that was, I wanted to move up the chain as quickly as possible. In fact, if it didn't happen within a year or 2 years, I was pissed because I expected to be moved up. Right now, I was held back for a lot of good reasons. Namely, I was young, arrogant, egotistical. I didn't know how to get people to want to work with me as opposed to work for me, right? As a sales leader. But nonetheless, I was unafraid, without freaking fear, to be able to tell the president of Sprint that his stuff may have sucked. Right. And I was the guy that in the room when we went to a sales kickoff with 3,000 people when we were at eSolutions, when they were, this is wonderful, this is great, we're hoorah, right? Let's get all excited. I'd raise my hand and be like, totally with you, 100%. But did you know that boom, boom, boom sucks? And what are you going to do to fix it? Now, the good news is I had a leg to stand on because I was performing. That was the good news. Yeah. The other good news is that as someone who wanted to be visible, I created my own distribution list. And as I learned new information that was never been talked about, never shown, I shared it with the team. And so I became a sharer of information. And now all of a sudden, amongst my peers, as the young cat, this is how I got through that. Remember, I told you I had a real struggle with people looking at me as someone they could respect, because many people that I worked with, I was the same age as their kid and making the same amount of money as them, right? So I needed to learn how to add value internally, and I became a go-to resource when people wanted to know, like, how did you get through this particular issue? How did you deal with security? How did you deal with this particular contract clause? How did you deal with indemnification? How did you deal with all the things that the corporate bureaucracy wouldn't let you get through? We talk about a material failure. You want to get through this? Here's the clause that might be able to help you in your next set of deal. And everybody was just like, dang, this guy's like just killing it. He's a sharer. He's willing to help other people get to where they want to go. And that was something I truly believed in, that in order for us to all succeed, we all had to help each other. And that's one of the reasons why, if you look at my career, out of 18 corporate years in sales, 15 of them were spent in the President's Club or in the 100% Club. And it was because I felt the desire and urge to be noticed. So therefore, I shared valuable content internally so everybody can up their game. And at the same time, I was unafraid to be able to tell somebody something's not working. And that's how I did it, man.
That's incredible. I love this story about fighting the age. I'm not going to say discrimination, but it's the easiest thing.
Oh, it absolutely was.
Like age discrimination. And instead of complaining about it and sitting back and crying, you're just like, okay, I'm going to just create so much value internally that I gain their respect, just like how I would sell the buyer by personalizing, delivering value, and then creating a call to action. It sounds like your call to action was almost like promote me, like personalizing the experience, delivering value internally to everyone in the organization, whether they could help you today or in the future. And then boom, call to action. I'm ready to get promoted. I want to get promoted.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And to leaders, it was tell me how I can be better. I didn't even need the promotion. Tell me how I can get better. This is one of my all-time favorites. I'll tell you, this one blows my mind. His name is Paget. Paget and I are still friends to this day. He was the former chief sales officer and president of Sprint, which Sprint was the mother owner of eSolutions, right? So once they merged us underneath back into the mothership, and they got rid of everything, and they found some jobs for us. I had a boss, Chris, his name was, who first year he was like, "Hey man, you're hot, young, salesperson. You think you're the shiz, but you really should consider going back and getting your degree." Because I didn't tell you this, but when I was at Cal, I started making so much dough. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Why do I need to go finish my degree? So I just started directing all my attention to the workplace.
Yeah.
So Chris told me one year, he's like, you really should go back. It's probably a good thing to do. The next year, he was like, hey man, you really need to go back. The company's going to pay for it. All things being equal, between you and somebody else, they're always going to go with the guy with the degree, right? So if you want to be promoted, and this is what's required to get into management. I didn't listen. Year number 3, he basically sat down with me in my annual performance review. He's like, so listen, here's the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to require you now to go back to school in order for you to meet our minimum requirements. And I was pissed. I was hot because I'm like, this is not right. You can't do that. This is not part of the process. And he's like, you're going to thank me later. And unfortunately, if you don't meet this requirement, you're not going to be able to pass your annual review. And he took a hard line on that one. And so anyways, I don't know why I was so ticked off about it because the company was going to pay for it, right? And I couldn't pay for my own school to begin with. So this was like a great deal, right?
Yeah.
So I go through and I go to roll into a night program. I transfer from Cal, all my credits over to St. Mary's College, which is a very reputable school here, especially in the Bay Area. I transferred to St. Mary's. And then I came up with this idea. I was like, I need to get to the top. I need to get to the top. How do I get to Paget? How do I get to this guy that I can build a relationship with? So I went into class one day and we were in our business management class. And I asked the professor, I said, I got my BA, ended up getting my BA in business management.
Awesome. Congrats.
And I went to one of the professors and I said, I got this idea. Do you think it's a good idea to get like business mentors? And he was like, absolutely. While you're going through this program, it'd be fabulous. This way, you can help you grow. You can start applying some of the skills. And so I said, is it a requirement? He was like, no, it's not a requirement. And I was like, tell me that it's a requirement. And he was like, what? Tell me that it's a requirement. He's like, I don't understand. What do you mean tell you? I said, I need you to tell me it's a requirement so I can go reach out to our president of the company and ask him to be my mentor because it's required.
It's awesome.
And I'll never lie. And he goes, okay, it's required.
That's awesome.
So that night I went back and I sent a message to Paget. And I said, Paget, one of the requirements for our
who's for the audience. Can you explain who Paget is?
Paget was the president and chief sales officer of, in this case, the global company Sprint. And so he was African American.
And he's managing how many people?
He had, I don't know, 20,000 people.
20,000 people. And Mario's like, yeah, I'm going to try to get this guy to be my mentor for college.
Exactly right. And I'm one of his employees, right? I'm like 15 layers deep, right? Or like whatever many layers. It had to be at least 20, 25,000 people in the organization. I don't remember at that time, but at that time, Sprint was like 80,000 people or something like that. Now they're like, I don't even know what they are now, but when I left, it was 40,000. So I sent him a note. I said, part of the requirement for my education and upbringing, as you know, I'm going back, you may or may not know, but I'm going back to school. Thank you so much for funding my program. I appreciate the fact that you have this leadership program in place. And so I'm going to get my bachelor's degree. But one of the challenges that I face as a young Mexican American is the ability to be able to do blah, 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 blah. And given the fact that you're African American, I would love for you to be my mentor. And I would love to be able to tell you my story of where I came from and the school of hard knocks. And so Paget writes back the next day, sure, I can give 30 minutes a month.
That's
book
crazy.
A meeting. So I didn't tell anybody this. So I go and I start booking meetings with Paget, right? I'm like, and I come in and I'm prepared, right? You're going to go in and have a meeting with someone that's this big. I come prepared. Here are my questions. Here are my problems. And the very first time I had a call with Paget, it was all about my youth, how internally I am being viewed as someone who's just a young kid. Yet, if you look at my performance and you look at what I'm doing, and I said, how do I overcome that? Help me overcome that from a business perspective,
That's
right?
Awesome.
And so,
great question.
What that did was it forced him to want to inquire about who is this guy that's in my organization. And now I became visible. And he mentored me. He coached me. Nobody really knew about it. He would inquire about the stats.
I probably wouldn't tell him that. I wouldn't tell anyone, right? Like you keep that sealed. Until
one day when we're having a call, Paget says to me, hey, how's everything going? I was like, man, it's really rough right now. He's like, rough? What's going on? Why is it rough? It's like, man, we're working on this deal in the field and, pricing won't accept it. And, it's a huge monster deal. It's for this particular company. And, they say the margins aren't good. And I'm just super frustrated, man. I was like, nothing you can do to help out with. And he's like, how much is it worth? Blah, blah, blah. What's the pricing? Well, because we do those deals. Those deals are with our monster accounts. What's the growth opportunity? Blah, 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 blah. He was like, well, that's a no-brainer. He's like, I'll tell you what, I'll place a phone call and we'll get this resolved. So that's when the cat got let out of the bag, when it was Paget made a phone call. And boy, did my vice president come unglued because they had already denied it. And so he thought I went around behind him.
He was
and
probably
little
so
did
pissed.
They know that for the last year that this guy had been mentoring me. right? And boom, the cat was out of the bag. All of a sudden, everybody knew that I had a backdoor connection. And now I put myself in a really good position. I still had to prove myself. I still had to deliver. I still had to sell, and I still had to do a good job. But that one opportunity allowed me to be able to say, I'm having this problem. And I didn't even think about, if I tell him, will he help me? I didn't. I just was, we were just talking about, rapping about the day. Anyways, so now that I think back, it was very well maneuvered. And whenever we had a problem, I can tell you, deal after deal, we had a great one. It was with one of the largest gas companies in the world. I can't name the name, but it was one of the largest.
Was it in your
gas
backyard
companies.
Or no?
What's that?
I said, was the gas company in your backyard or no, different?
Oh, in California? Yes, absolutely. And so
I did some work with those guys.
I had escalated this deal, right? Vice president, senior vice president, the vice president of finance. They killed this deal. I was like, okay, all right, you watch. We had sales kickoff 2 weeks later. So at this point, Paget is mentoring is kind of done, right? So I see Paget and he's like, hey, how's everything going, Mark? I give him a hug. I'm like, yeah, everything's going okay. I'm like, we've got these monster deals out there. It's like, one of them is this company by the name, out in California, one of the gas petroleum companies. And he's like, what? You're working on a deal? I was like, yeah, it's a huge deal. It's a $45 million deal. He was like, what? And then I was like, yeah. I'm like, but unfortunately, we're going to lose it. He's like, what? What do you mean we're going to lose it? I was like, wait, you don't know about it? Now, mind you, the leaders in front of me, above me, had already said that it had gotten to him, that he had already kiboshed it and put the kibosh on it. And he goes, what do you mean we're going to lose? I thought, what do you mean? What do you mean we're going to lose? What do you mean? Why are you asking me that question? You know that you kiboshed the deal. He was like, I kiboshed the deal? And I'm like, didn't you? And he was like, I don't know anything about this deal. I was like, that's strange, because our vice president of finance, so-and-so, while I'm on the phone with him, they said that you did not approve this deal. And he said, I did not approve this deal. What are you talking about? And I was like, that's strange. Well, let me tell you the problem. Oh, bro, I planned this. I planned it. And we're in the conference. We're at a dinner, the big giant dinner, right?
And this is SKO, right?
Yeah, SKO. There's
everyone, your management, everyone's there. Like, you can't miss anyone on the team.
He says, I remember when we lost this company 8 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it was. We lost it, and our CEO got ripped a new one by the CIO. We need to win this deal back. Come with me. And I was like, oh, shoot, it's about to go down. So he goes, he finds the VP of finance, taps on his shoulder. Hey, John, we're going to call him John. John, I heard that we needed to get BAFO pricing for this deal here that Mario's been working on in his team. What's the problem? I swear to God, if you had ever seen a dude look at you like he wanted to cut you, man, that was his eyes. Those were his freaking eyes. He looked at me like he wanted to cut me. He was going to take that butter knife,
dinner, the steak
drive it right through my kidney, right? And he looked at me. He's like, well, the margins aren't that great. He goes, what's the NPV on it? Net present value. And he was like, it's such and such. He goes, what's the problem? He goes, well, we obviously through your direction, we want to blah, 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 blah. We don't want to do deals like that, yada, yada. And he goes, why didn't you bring it to me? And this is the president now, like grilling this cat in front of everybody at this table. He goes, look, you get me those numbers on the desk tomorrow. I want to review all the details because this account is a critical account for us to win back.
Damn.
Here's what happened. 5 minutes after that episode, the administrative assistant for our vice president comes to me and she says, so-and-so wants to talk to you. And I was like, wait, me? What?
Yeah.
We go into another room.
You probably knew it was coming, huh?
We go in another room and I walk in. I was like, hey, so-and-so, how's it going? And I'm smiling, acting like nothing's wrong. He was like, I told you, don't you ever. And he just ripped me a new one. And I just stood there. I let him go. He was pissed because I went over his head ×2, right?
Damn.
But I knew it was the freaking right thing to do to win this business. And then he said to me, I swear to God, if you ever, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how much percentage over plan. I don't care how many times you've been to President's Club. If you ever do this again, I will fire you. That's what he said to me.
Brutal.
And of course, that's pretty serious talk right there, right? And he was hot. He was hot, man. So I look at him and I said, I could understand why you're upset. Hopefully you could understand when someone tells me that you got so-and-so's approval and they lied to you, that you look at that as the issue. By the way, when I close this $45 million deal, you're going to thank me. And he goes, You better hope to God that you close this deal. Guess what? Close the freaking deal, baby. We closed the deal. It was a $45 million deal. I had no doubt. Like, I knew what it was going to take to be able to make that happen. And unfortunately, I, almost noosed myself, but it was the right thing to do, right? It was the right thing to do. And it was all about relationships. Know the right time to be able to exercise or play that card in terms of the strategy. And by the way, my director, he claimed plausible deniability, right? And he was like, I know exactly what you're about to do. I know what you're going to do. Don't even tell me what you're going to do. Because I was like, hey, man, I want to let you know about my strategy. When we go to kickoff, he's like, I already know what you're going to do. Don't tell me because I need to claim plausible deniability. But if I were you, I would do the same exact thing. So that's how I knew. The guy that you reported to supported you doing that? You told? Yeah. So it was my boss. Yep. Who reported to a vice president, who reported to senior vice president, who reported to a president. So my boss over our entire Northern California region, that was the one that was like, don't tell me what you're going to do. I already know what you're going to do. Yeah. I need to claim plausible deniability. But if it were me and I were you, I would do what I think you're going to do. Right. And that's how I knew, like, who was the guy that who was chewing you out? Oh, that was 2 levels up. That was my VP. The VP of sales. That was 2 levels up. But the guy that I went to, Paget in this case, was 2 levels above him. Right. Yep. So the VP of finance was hot. Unfortunately, I definitely burned the VP of finance. And so every deal thereafter that I ever brought to the table was always said no. Oh, and I had to always escalate. So it was like one day I called him and I'm like, look, either there's one or two things going to happen. Either you're going to give in to what I'm asking you to do because we know what we need to do out in the field, or you're going to keep forcing me to go escalate around you. And I'm willing to do it, man. So we ended up having a mano conversation. That's sometimes when you get in a big corporation, you get into layers of management, you gotta do that. But was it hard for you to have that difficult conversation with this guy to be like, dude, like, you're trying to hurt me, but you're just hurting yourself and the company? No, I mean, for me, because that's like low emotional intelligence stuff. But I know it happens all the time. His job as a finance guy was to protect the dollars and cents. That was his job, right? So, he had a job to do and I had a job to do. And the buck, this is what I always said, the buck didn't stop at our VP of finance. Even though he owned everything and everybody would go to him, the buck never stopped there, because I'm going to tell you this much. Now, as a CEO of Ingresso, we'll do deals that may even be potentially, which we haven't done yet, but potentially zero margin for the benefit of being able to get to a bigger piece of pie, right? And so that's what you got to be very strategic about. If you're in a big company, companies can do these types of deals because they have that margin there from the other deals that will make up for it. Yep. If you're in a small company like ours, you're going to think twice about it, right? Yeah, because you don't have any other... Because you may not have margin to be able to help support that, right? So you got to be very strategic about where you do this at. And so as a result of, did you want a big giant logo on your books with $45 million, right? I mean, so that's what you got to ask yourself, but not at the expense of losing money. Because if it's a deal that size at $45 million, that could be a big loss as well. If you had a net margin of a 0 or below, that could be a big loss. So you got to be really careful about those types of things. So I, as a salesperson and as a sales leader, I became very strategic at understanding finance. I wanted to understand net margin, net present value. I wanted to understand these things because when I got on the call with them, I needed to know, what was the NPV? What was the net margin of these deals? What does that mean in terms of dollars back to the business? What is the average NPV and deal size that we wanted to go through? Why did we have an average? How far below or above was that from the average? So I became very smart so that I could have these conversations. And that's where I encourage other sales folks to do the same thing as well. Yeah, it's crazy. And the reason why your finance guy originally shot down the $45 million deal, it didn't hit those KPIs that he was told that he had to stick to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the interesting part is all that is so situational. At the given point in time, yes, you're told to use these KPIs, but you have no idea, maybe the pipeline's dead. Maybe, the market tells you have to bring in X to increase the stock percentage points. That's awesome that you were able to get that through. That's crazy. So looking back, would you do the same thing over again on that whole tenure at Sprint? Because it sounds like
you played a lot of high risk cards that could have gotten a lot of people fired if they maybe didn't have the presidential relationship or things of that nature.
Namely myself. Get myself fired, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, if it was anyone else that didn't have that high of relationship or wasn't as performing as highly and as confident, they could have probably gotten whacked pretty easily.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I can count on less than one hand. There were 3 deals that I strategically went through and took to the president behind the scenes. 3 in my entire career.
And that's, over a decade at Sprint.
Exactly right. The other ones, I muscled my way through, right? And I would put business cases together. I would showcase why this is the right thing to do. I understood the margins, and I would go toe to toe. Like I would not be satisfied if someone said this deal is not profitable. Prove it to me. No. You prove to me that it's not profitable. Why is it not profitable? Show me the averages. Show me with other deals of this size. Show me with other companies. And so I was finance's worst nightmare. I will admit that from a special pricing perspective, right? The special pricing desk did not love me, except until I met with Darren Boucher, man. Darren, he's a freaking rock star. That guy, he understood. He was a lawyer by trade. He got into special pricing, and he was like, dude, I love this cat Mario. He's just like out there, him and his team and the global accounts are bringing down massive deals. They're thinking about how to be able to close $120 million contracts, $30 million contracts. Yeah. So once he saw that, you have a champion, then you're good, right? But you got to prove yourself. And would I do it all over again? 1,000%. I wouldn't change anything that I did in terms of the strategy. Look, as salespeople, our job is 50% of it is selling internally. The other 50% is selling externally. That's it. Especially when you get into big corporations. That
was my hardest thing dealing with at IBM Interactive and selling for Google. It's like, oh my gosh. I would spend 70% selling internally. Right. When I'd have multi-million dollar deals. It'd be like 30% extra. I'm like, why is it so hard to close a multi-million dollar deal in here? Right. Like, you guys should be thanking me that I bought this.
And the bigger you are, the bigger the company you work for, the harder it gets to be able to get things through the approval process. And it shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't be. The barriers to getting stuff done for sales, it should not be layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. That's just ridiculous. That's stupid, right? Yep. But nonetheless, you asked me about the relationship. It was used 3 times over a 10-year period, right? Yeah. Everything else was bona fide, legit strategy of how to sell internally, was selling each layer to be able to get them on your side. And when I needed to, like that $45 million deal, they were wrong. My vice president was wrong. My senior vice president was wrong. The vice president of finance was wrong. And they know it. I'll say it today, right? They were wrong. And I was willing to bet my career on it. And I played that wild card, as I was once taught. But I was really nervous about it. And that's why my boss, when I went into him and said, listen, I need to talk about the strategy, what I'm going to do at sales kickoff. That's what he said to me. He goes, I already know exactly what you're planning on doing. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. But if it was me and I were you, I would do the exact same thing that I think you're going to do. Right. And he knew of my relationship with the president. Right. So
what's the key to selling internally? Like, real quick before we jump to PGI, and then I want to talk about your top sales secret. But since you had to deal with so much internal selling and buy-in, what's a strategy, tip, secret that you could share there?
First off, I was privileged to have some really great leaders that worked, that I reported to. I had really great leaders.
So they were like open to hearing your recommendations and thoughts.
Yes, because I came, and here's my secret. Because I came prepared to have a conversation and I was educated. See, a lot of salespeople, especially in big companies, make the mistake of coming and being upset when the deal doesn't go their way. They don't have the data behind it. They don't understand the financials. They don't understand the mechanics of what it's going to take. Meaning they can't say, boss, if you give me this pricing, I know I'm going to get the deal because... Right. And so oftentimes you don't know who your competitors are. You don't know what the pricing is of the competitors. You don't have relationships inside of an account. You haven't strategically coordinated yourself with the 6.8 buyers that are inside of the account. You don't understand the value proposition. You can't talk about who are all your economic buyers, strategic buyers. You can't articulate the whole entire strategy. And I don't know what it is about me, but from just a pure strategy perspective, I'm a huge strategist. And I know when I'm working in an account, when I'm working an opportunity, I know exactly who all the players are, who all my champions are, a plan to be able to make them my friends, a plan to be able to ask them questions. Like, there are a lot of people who wouldn't ask questions, who feel uncomfortable on those first calls. Like, who are you considering? Why are you considering them? Oh, interesting. And when you say it like that, when you find out it's a competitor, oh, interesting. The next clue from the person on the line is, why do you say interesting? Now you're questioning them without questioning them. They want to know why you're questioning them. That's a simple sales tactic. Oh, interesting, right? Why? And then you're like, well, look, I don't talk about my competitors, but since you asked, you told me that you had this goal. I'm confused at how this provider might help you get to this goal, given the fact that you had to know your competitors. And I knew my stuff, man. I knew everything about my competition. I knew where they were failing at. I tracked them. I watched them. I smelt every single piece of them to be able to understand what they were doing and what made us better or what made us worse. And what made us worse, I would bring up front right now. Here's what you're going to be challenged by when working with us. Boom, 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 boom. Is that going to be a showstopper? Well, help me understand more about, right? So if you bring these things up front, now you can minimize them. Now the competition is neutralized. They can't talk about how bad you are at something else because the buyers already know. And at the same time, if you are practicing personalization, you are building relationships with people and forming friendships. And that's what I did. So you had to know your stuff. And I had a great call today with one of our sales folks. And I said, listen, when you're on the phone with a customer, you are the resident expert. Sound like it. Right? And even when you don't know something, don't be like, I'm really not sure. I think the answer, I think we probably, maybe, or I don't. It's okay to not know something, but here's how you say you don't know it. You know what, Brandon? That's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that question, but I know exactly who to go to. I'm going to go ask JC. I'm going to go ask Susie. I'm going to go ask, and as soon as I get the answer back, I'm going to get it to you because there's obviously a reason that we don't do something or we don't do it that way. And I need to know, and I want to know, so I'll get an answer back to you. That speaks with confidence as a salesperson, right? Even when you don't know something. So know your stuff, know your competition, know the strategy, know all the reasons why someone's going to say no, internally and externally, and sell to those things.
I love it. And that's the personalized value call to action. It sounds like you got to do all three, PVC, internally and externally, to win in the game of sales. Mario Martinez, this has been an amazing episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. Where can people follow you, subscribe, learn more about you and your team and what you have going on?
First off, go to vengreso.com. That's V as in Victor, ENGRESO. It's one S. Vengreso.com. Feel free to make sure that you connect with me on LinkedIn. Please send me a personalized connection request. Tell me you heard me here on the show with Brandon Bornancin, my boy here. And you can certainly follow me on Twitter at M as in Mario _ the number 3 JR. Hey, thanks for listening to the Selling with Social Sales podcast. Did you enjoy that show? If so, would you do me a huge favor and give the Selling with Social podcast a rating and review on iTunes? That would be super awesome. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to vengreso.com. That's VENGRESO.com and click on podcast. From there, you'll find the Selling with Social podcast. Thanks for listening in. And until the next show, be awesome. Mario Martinez Jr.